Thank you, teachers, for joining us for another Teacher's Tips. I am really excited to have a friend and colleague with me, Niccole Tiffany, who taught in Gonzales and Carmel Unified in California, elementary teacher and coordinator in her district for 21 years. Niccole, I brought you here today to help these teachers and help me with a question that we get often, and it is this. How can I integrate literacy in my elementary social studies and science classroom? Niccole, I'm going to let you take it away and give us some great tips.
All right, Brian, thanks for having me. I'll go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to talk about a few different components of the TCI program that I really love when I am teaching and integrating social studies and science into my reading and ELD time. So in program support, you'll see that there is a tab here for reading and ELD support. There are some great resources here. And I love that all of these really go well with my reading instruction because so much of what you're teaching, cause and effect, drawing conclusions, summarizing, that's all things that you do in language arts. So you can really integrate there. I also have found this gem in the social studies skills section. And you'll see for building social studies skills for elementary classrooms, when you go down to the graphic organizer toolkit and click on that, there are so
Oh my
many
gosh.
great resources here.
Oh,
And
wow.
what's really, let me make this a little bit smaller. What's so nice is you can use these same graphic organizers in language arts, in social studies, in science. So many of them will be applicable in anything you're teaching.
Right. The subjects don't
And
matter, right?
no.
Yeah.
And right here, looking at this biography one for an example, that's another tip that I would love to give is the biographies. I'm in the science program now for fifth grade,
Mhm.
and the biographies are fantastic. And teaching nonfiction text through biographies is such a great way to support not only those nonfiction strategies that you would use and the text features that you would use, but also it has built-in comprehension as well. So there's a video in a lot of them. The reading is right underneath here.
Oh,
And so
cool.
you've got your great nonfiction text with some questions as well. And I've also found that when you go to the enhancing learning, there's also some great suggestions of additional reading opportunities that are all biographies as well. There's a bunch of different kinds of reading here, but the biographies are fantastic and that can really integrate with what you're teaching. So the use of biographies, I think, is fantastic. I think there's so many different toolkits that are in this program support. So I highly suggest checking those out. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is inquiry.
Mhm.
So when we're trying to teach reading and we're trying to teach writing, one of the things that goes along with that is critical thinking, asking questions, generating questions, answering questions. So these inquiry projects ask students to answer questions.
Mhm.
They ask them to develop questions. They ask them to collect evidence through all of the lessons that are within the unit. And then they ask them at the very end here to do research, which is reading and writing, and
Mhm.
then constructing an argument. And for you science teachers, this claim evidence reasoning, you can find that both in the social studies and in the science projects as well. So those are three strategies that I just really love, using the toolkits, using the biographies to teach nonfiction, and also using the inquiry projects to really support reading and writing in the content areas.
I love the models that are there. They're so practical, easy to be able to implement, and especially like that inquiry, the project, whether it's social studies or science, it's scaffolded, right? I mean, it
Mhm.
really helps you to take the students through that process.
Yeah,
That's
and it creates ownership for them. You know, they really, when they are invested in inquiry and they're invested in a project, all of those reading skills and the writing skills and the critical thinking skills and the listening and speaking skills. I mean, that's really important too. Our report cards, we had to grade in listening and speaking. So we really have opportunities where we can use the rubrics that are in TCI and use those inquiry projects to really be able to do that. So,
So I'm going to pick on you one last thing before we go,
mhm.
because you shared something with me about some research that I think if teachers don't know, I think would help them to understand why it's so critical that you do this within the social studies and the science, the math class, why you do it outside of your ELA time.
Yeah, so we all know that time is limited in an elementary classroom. And so sometimes we feel like we need to sacrifice social studies and science in order to teach ELA. But the Fordham Institute did a research project and they looked at students starting in kindergarten all the way through fifth grade or sixth grade. And they looked at students that received more social studies instruction from those who didn't. And interestingly, their reading comprehension improved much more when they were taught more social studies and more science because they were learning in the content areas. They were building background. They had more knowledge to be able to apply to whatever literature, whatever reading it was that they would encounter in their ELA block. So I thought that was really interesting. And it kind of proved what I thought too as a teacher. So
that's great. And we've got all those great toolkits that you showed. We've got the biographies that are there to support, plus those projects to go with. Awesome.
There's a wealth of resources.
A treasure trove or a cornucopia, it might even be called. Niccole, thank you so much for the time. Teachers, it's going to be your chance to get in there. Click that explore button, go and take a look at those toolkits, try out one of those projects with your students, and then you're going to be able to see how we can help to support literacy inside your classroom.